I just love this song. It's a newer one. Hey, Bob. How you doing, darling? How you doing, sweet cakes? Okay, Google, stop. Oh, what the hell is this? Oh, the back of my mom's picture was falling off. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Aunty Andrea's Reading Corner. I'm your delightful host, as always, Andrea Pandrea. And I actually meant, I fucked up, because I meant to open by singing the theme song to WKRP in Cincinnati. Baby, if you've ever wondered. I'll go through the whole thing. But man, I love that one. I might do that next time. I spent the entire day yesterday binging seasons 1 and 2, which is the only disc set that they put out for WKRP in Cincinnati. And I laughed my head off. I went right till 2 in the morning because I just couldn't stop watching it. And anybody, I don't know, if I know you really well and you want to borrow it, I'll lend it to you because I wouldn't give it to just anybody, but it's so funny. Here's the thing about it. Hey, Dan, good to see you. Welcome. The thing about WKRP in Cincinnati that I love so much is that it's as relevant and funny today as it was then. There's some stuff that they say that you wouldn't say today because the 80s were a little bit different time than they are now. But, I mean, and with that show, it's not even so much what they say, it's the nuances, it's the things that they aren't saying. Like, it was like episode 2, and Jennifer asks Johnny Fever to talk to Herb to get Herb off her back, because Herb's always hitting on her, right? So he's got Herb in the office, in Big Guy's office, and he's like, well, how do I put this? He's like, I don't know how to tell you. And he says, basically, Jennifer's the result of one of the most successful sex change operations since in the history of humankind. And Herb's face, right? So that you're laughing already. But then it's the next scene is him. He just opens the door and looks out in the lobby. He's just standing there. And Jennifer turns and she sees him. She doesn't do anything. And she just takes a step forward and he just goes back in and shuts the door. And it's just that scene cracks me up every time I see it. Hey, Laura. Oh my God, my cousin Laura from Scotland. Every week I'm getting another wonderful visitor from Scotland. Laura, how you doing? How you doing? Everybody, Laura, everybody. What are you doing up? I didn't think you worked a night shift. I mean, it's almost 8 o'clock my time, so that's got to be almost 4 o'clock in the morning for you. So cheers, doll. Good to see you. Maybe you're on your hollies. I don't know, but it's really good to see you. It's always nice to have somebody from Scotland pop in and say hello. Either that or Laura's really, really drunk. No, I'm joking. Hey, my beautiful. Mwah. Talk about gorgeous cousins. I tell you right now, I have the most gorgeous family on the planet. I really do. Like, Laura is yet another. Lindsay popped in last Thursday. So I was saying, oh, Lindsay, my gorgeous cousin Lindsay. Now it's my gorgeous cousin Laura. We should get a family photo next time I'm over there and no one will ever believe it. Caroline! Oh my God! There's Caroline as well. Laura's sister, Caroline. Hello. Oh, I'm drinking. I'm dropping my drink. I'm so shocked. You guys must be together, are you? What are you doing? Come on. Give it up. Give me the details. If you're together, I know you're up to no good. That's for sure. I love you both. Okay, listen. I'm not going to waste a lot of time because I'm late getting on. I want to wrap up this book once and for all. I'm not sure who that is there. I think that's Laura and Bob, so that's good. Other people get on, but I don't see that they're here until they start talking or say something. So I'm in bed alone. Babe, I feel your pain. I go to bed alone every night too. I wish I had somebody I could read a book at 4 in the morning when I'm sitting up and like fucking stuck in my head about some nonsense. Anyway, hopefully I can give you some entertainment and lull you back to sleepy times. So yes, I'm going to be wrapping up this book, this delightful tale, The BFG by Roald Dahl. This will be the last night, and then we talked a bit the other night about the next book and what I'm going to do. So I wanted to talk about that if we have people in the conversation by the time I finish reading this. If I don't, then I'm simply going to post some options that I came up with. Yes, 50 Shades of Grey is definitely in there. My only question about 50 Shades is that I kind of found it online because I couldn't find my copy. I'm going to have to buy another one. And funnily, I called 2 bookstores. They're like, no, we don't have it. I was like, oh, shitty. So I don't know, I'll have to get Mel to send me her copy or something. But I started reading it aloud. It's not, I don't know if it's read aloud worthy, or like, I don't know if it's going to be super enticing except for the really exciting parts when they're in the room playing and stuff, which really only happens a couple of times. So I'll talk to you guys about it and we'll figure out, because there's the other option. Good old Bob over there gave me an idea. Penthouse Forum. I think that might be a bit too risque, but I like the idea that it's short stories, because then I can just do one story a night, or I even thought I could do, because I have another type of book that I thought would be really good to read. I can do theme nights. So Tuesdays I can do something less racy, short stories. I actually found a fantastic book of short stories for that. And then Thursday nights, I don't know, I can call it Thong Thursdays or something. I'll come up with something. I was gonna call Tuesdays Tickle Me Tuesday. But tickle me meaning tickle me, make me laugh. Anyway, maybe the porn nights will be Tuesday. We'll see. But anywho's, here I go with the final episode of the BFG. Hang on. Yes, so if you remember the Queen, oh shit, that's right, I have to do the Queen's voice. I just suck at the English accent. I'll have some more drinks and then I'll be into it. Okay. So she has summoned the Air Force immediately to trap these fucking giants and get rid of them, or whatever. So, I'm thirsty. Sorry. I really did just finish my day doing showings until just now, so I really needed that big haul. All right, here we go. The plan. The head of the army and the head of the Air Force stood at attention beside the Queen's breakfast table. Sophie, pardon me, Sophie was still in her seat, and the BFG was still high up on his crazy perch. It took the Queen only 5 minutes to explain the situation to the military men. I knew there was something like this going on. Oh no. I knew there was something like this going on, Your Majesty. I'm not doing an accent for the head of the army. The head of the army said. For the last 10 years, we have been getting reports from nearly every country in the world about people disappearing mysteriously in the night. We had one only the other day from Panama. Oh, for the hattie taste, cried the BFG. And one from Wellington in New Zealand, said the head of the army. Oh, for the booty flavor, said the BFG. What is he talking about, said the head of the Air Force. Work it out for yourself, said the Queen. What time is it? 10 a.m. In 8 hours, those 9 bloodthirsty brutes will be galloping off to gobble up another couple dozen fortunate wretches. Fuck. They have to be stopped. We must act fast. We'll bomb the blighters, shouted the head of the Air Force. We'll mow them down with machine guns, cried the head of the army. I do not approve of murder, said the Queen. But they are murderers themselves, cried the head of the army. That is no reason why we should follow their example, the Queen said. 2 wrongs don't make a right. And 2 rights don't make a left, cried the BFG. We must bring them back alive, the Queen said. How? The 2 military men said together. They're all at least 50 feet high. They knock us down like 9-pins. Wait, cried the BFG. Hold your horseflies. Keep your skirts on. I think I has the answer to the maiden's hair. Let him speak, the Queen said. Every afternoon, the BFG said, all these giants is in the land of Naughty. I can't understand a word this feller says, the head of the army snapped. Why doesn't he speak clearly? He means the land of Nod, Sophie said. It's pretty obvious. Exactly, cried the BFG. Every afternoon, all these 9 giants is lying on the ground, snoozing away in very deep sleep. They is always resting like that before they is galloping off to guzzle another helping of human beings. Go on, they said. So what? So what you soldiers has to do is to creep up on the giants while they is still in the land of Naughty and tie their arms and legs with mighty ropes and wonking chains. Brilliant, the Queen said. Brilliant. That's all very well, said the head of the army, but how do we get the brutes back here? We can't load 50-foot giants onto trucks. Shoot them on the spot, that's what I say. Fucking agree. Get her done, boys. The BFG looked down from his lofty perch and said, this time to the head of the Air Force, "You is having belly poppers, is you not?" "Is he being rude?" the head of the Air Force said. "He means helicopters," Sophie said. "Then why doesn't he say so? Of course we have helicopters." "Wopsy big belly poppers?" asked the BFG. "Yes, very big ones," the head of the Air Force said proudly. "That's what he said. But no helicopter is big enough to get a giant like that inside it." "You do not put him inside," the BFG said. "You sling him underneath the belly of your belly popper and carry him like a torpedo. A portito." "A portito." "Like a what?" said the head of the Air Force. "Like a torpedo," Sophie said. "Could you do that, Air Marshal?" "No." "Could you do that, Air Marshal?" said the Queen. Sorry, guys, I didn't have time to pre-read and prepare myself because I had to squeeze in that last showing, but it went really well, and I think they're going to take the suite, so it was worth disappointing you all. Sorry. "Well, I suppose I could," the head of the Air Force said, admitted grudgingly. "Then get cracking," said the Queen. "You'll need 9 helicopters, 1 for each giant." "Where is this place?" Actually, I'm kind of sad I'm not going to have that fucking butler guy. I was kind of nailing that Scottish accent. And now, Laura says, "I have to sleep, but I'll catch up on this tomorrow like I always do." Aw. Good night, Laura. I love you. I wanted Laura to give me her opinion on my Scottish accent. I think I'd do pretty good. Anyway, maybe I'll give somebody else one on the next book. Oh, I was thinking I could do 50 Shades of Grey in Scottish. That would kind of make it more interesting. Anywho, sorry, where was I? "Hi, Emily. We might all be in the land of naughty with you by next week." I know, right? It was bound to happen eventually. We all know me well, don't we? Okay. "Let's get cracking. You'll need 9, yep. Where is this place?" the Air Force man said to the BFG. "I presume you can pinpoint it on the map." "Pinpoint," said the BFG. "Map? I was never hearing these words before. Is this Air Force bean talking slushbunkle?" The Air Marshal's face turned the color of a ripe plum. He was not used to being told he was talking slushbunkle. The Queen, with her usual admirable tact and good sense, came to the rescue. "BFG," she said, "can you tell us more or less where the giant country is?" "No, Magister," the BFG said. "Not on my Nelly." "Then we're jiggered," cried the Army General. "This is ridiculous," cried the Air Marshal. "You must not be given up so easy," the BFG said calmly. "The first titchy bobsicle you meet, and you begin shouting you is biff squiggled." The Army General was no more used to being insulted than the Air Marshal. His face began to swell with fury, and his cheeks blew out until they looked like 2 huge ripe tomatoes. "Your Majesty," he cried, "we are dealing with a lunatic. I want nothing more to do with this ridiculous operation." Operation. The Queen, who was used to the tantrums of her senior officials, ignored him completely. "BFG," she said, "would you please tell these rather dim-witted characters exactly what to do?" "A pleasure, Your Majesty," said the BFG. "Now listen to me carefully, you 2 boot-bogglers." The military men began to twitch, but they stayed put. "I is not having the foggiest idea where giant country is in the world," the BFG said, "but I is always able to gallop there. I is galloping forthwards and backwards from giant country every night to blow my dreams into little Chidler's bedrooms. I is knowing the way very well. So all you is having to do is this. Put your 9 big belly hoppers up in the air and let them follow me as I is galloping along." How long will the journey take?" the Queen asked. "If we is leaving now," the BFG said, "we will be arriving just as the giants is having their afternoon snozzle." "Oh, splendid," said the Queen. Then turning to the 2 military men, she said, "Prepare to leave immediately." The head of the army, who was feeling pretty miffed by the whole business, said, "That's all very well, Your Majesty, but what are we going to do with the blighters once we've got them back?" "Don't worry about that," the Queen told him. "We'll be ready for them. Hurry up now. Off you go." If it pleases your majesty, Sophie said, I would like to ride with the BFG to keep him company. Where will you sit? Asked the queen. In his ear, Sophie said. Show them, BFG. The BFG got down from his chair. He picked Sophie up with his fingers. He swiveled his huge right ear until it was parallel with the ground. Then he placed Sophie gently inside it. The heads of the army and the Air Force stood there, goggling. The queen smiled. You really are rather a wonderful giant, she said. Magister, the BFG said, I is wishing to ask a very special thing from you. What is it? The queen said. Could I please bring back here in the belly poppers, all my collection of dreams? They has taken me years and years to collect, and I is not one to lose them. Why, of course, said the queen. I wish you a safe journey. Oh, just you and me, Bob. Oh, wait. Emily, yeah, she's back. Okay. Just give me a second. There we go. All right. The BFG had made thousands of journeys to and from giant country over the years, but he had never in his life made one quite like this, with 9 huge helicopters roaring along just over his head. He had never before traveled in broad daylight either. He hadn't dared to. But this was different. Now he was doing it for the Queen of England herself, and he was frightened of nobody. As he galloped across the British Isles with the helicopters thundering above him, people stood and gaped and wondered what on earth was going on. They had never seen the likes of it before, and they never would again. Every now and then, the pilots of the helicopters would catch a glimpse of a small girl wearing glasses, crouching in the giant's ear and waving to them. They always waved back. The pilots marveled at the giant's speed and at the way he leaped across wide rivers and over huge houses. Sorry, my shitty Wi-Fi's. Oh, that's okay. I know you're trying to stay with me. I know you're always with me in spirit, no matter what. Pardon me. But they hadn't seen anything yet. Be careful to hang on tight, the BFG said. Be as going fast as a fizzle crump. The BFG changed into his famous top gear, and all at once he began to fly forward as though there were springs in his legs and rockets in his toes. He went skimming over the earth like some magical hop, skip, and jumper, with his feet hardly ever touching the ground at all. As usual, Sophie had to crouch low in the crevice of his ear to save herself from being swept clean away. The 9 pilots in their helicopters suddenly realized that they were being left behind. The giant was streaking way ahead. They opened their throttles to full speed, and even then they were only just able to keep up. In the leading machine, the head of the Air Force was sitting beside the pilot. He had a world atlas on his knees, and he kept staring first at the atlas, then at the ground below, trying to figure out where they were going. Frantically, he turned the pages of the atlas. Where in the devil are we going? He cried. I haven't the foggiest idea, the pilot answered. The Queen's orders were to follow this giant, and that's exactly what I'm doing. The pilot was a young Air Force officer with a bushy mustache. He was very proud of his mustache, as he should be. He was also quite fearless, and he loved adventure. He thought this was a super adventure. It's fun going new places, he said. New places, shouted the head of the Air Force. What the blazes do you mean, new places? This place we're flying over now isn't on the atlas, is it? The pilot said, grinning. You're darn right it isn't in the atlas, cried the head of the Air Force. We've flown clear off the last page. I expect that old giant knows where he's going, the young pilot said. He's leading us into disaster, cried the head of the Air Force. He was shaking with fear. In a seat behind him sat the head of the army, who was even more terrified. Phil, hey Phil, good to see you, honey. Slowly everybody's coming in to join us. Everyone's finishing dinner. He was shaking with fear, and the seat behind him said the head of the army. You don't mean to tell me that we've gone right out of the atlas, he cried, leaning forward to look. That's exactly what I am telling you, cried the Air Forceman. Look for yourself. Here's the very last map and the whole flamin' atlas. We went off that over an hour ago. He turned the page. As in all atlases, there were 2 completely blank pages at the very end. Hey, right on, brother. Where was I? Yeah. Usually I can recover right away. Sometimes I gap like, ooh, what day is it? Oh, right. I was reading. Okay, that's exactly what I'm telling you. Look for yourself. Here's the last. He turned the page. As in all atlases, there were 2 completely blank pages at the very end. So now we must be somewhere here, he said, putting a finger on one of the blank pages. Where's here? Cried the head of the army. The young pilot was still grinning broadly. He said to them, that's why they always put 2 blank pages at the back of the atlas. They're for new countries. You're meant to fill them in yourself. The head of the Air Force glanced down at the ground below. Just look at this godforsaken desert, he cried. All the trees are dead and all the rocks are blue. The giant stopped, the young pilot said. He's waving us down. The pilots throttled back the engines, and all 9 helicopters landed safely on the great yellow wasteland below. Then each of them lowered a ramp from its belly. 9 jeeps, 1 from each helicopter, were driven down the ramps. Each jeep contained 6 soldiers and a vast quantity of thick rope and heavy chains. I don't see any giants, the head of the army said. The giants is all just out of sight over there, the BFG told them. But if you is taking these slosh-buckling, noisy belly-hoppers over any closer, all the giants is waking up at once, and then pop goes the weasel. So you want us to proceed by jeep? The head of the army said. Yep, the BFG said. But you must all be very, very hushy quiet. No roaring of motors, no shouting, no mucking about, no piggery-jokery. The BFG, with Sophie still in his ear, trotted forward, and the jeeps followed close behind. Suddenly, the most dreadful rumbling noise was heard by everyone. The head of the army went pea-green in the face. Those are guns, he cried. There is a battle raging somewhere up ahead of us. Turn back, the lot of you. Let's get out of here. Pig spiffle, the BFG said. Those noises are not guns. Of course they're guns, shouted the head of the army. I'm a military man and I know a gun when I hear one. Turn back. Those is just the giants snortling in their sleep. Hey, Bill. William. Linda. Hello. Hi, people sneaking in under my nose. Good to see you guys. I is a giant myself, and I know a giant snortle when I is hearing one. Are you quite sure? The army man said anxiously. Positive, the BFG said. Proceed cautiously, the army man ordered. They all moved on. Then they saw them. Even at a distance, they were enough to scare the daylights out of all the soldiers. But when they got close and saw what the giants really looked like, they began to sweat with fear. 9 fearsome, ugly, half-naked, 50-feet-long brutes lay sprawled over the ground in various grotesque attitudes of sleep, and the sound of their snoring was indeed like gunfire in battle. The BFG raised a hand. The jeeps all stopped. The soldiers got out. What happens if one of them wakes up? Whispered the head of the army, his knees knocking together with fear. If any of one of them is waking up, he will gobble you down before you can say, knack jife. The BFG answered, grinning hugely. Me is the only one what won't be gobbled up, because giants has never eaten giants. Me and Sophie is the only one safe, because I is hiding her if that happens. The head of the army took several paces to the rear. So did the head of the Air Force. They climbed rather quickly back into their jeep, ready to make a fast getaway if necessary. Fucking cowards. Go forward, men, the head of the army said. Go forward and do your duty bravely. The soldiers crept forward with their ropes and chains. All of them were trembling mightily. None dared speak a word. The BFG, with Sophie now sitting on the palm of his hand, stood nearby, watching the operation. To give the soldiers their due, they were extremely courageous. There were 6 well-trained, efficient men working on each giant, and within 10 minutes, 8 out of the 9 giants had been trussed up like chickens and were still snoring contentedly. The 9th, who happened to be the flesh lump eater, was causing trouble for the soldiers because he was lying with his right arm tucked underneath his enormous body. It was impossible to tie his wrists and arms together without first getting that arm out from underneath him. Very, very cautiously, the 6 soldiers who were working on the flesh lump eater began to pull at the huge arm, trying to release it. The flesh lump eater opened his tiny piggy black eyes. "Which of you foul pesters is wiggling my arm?" he bellowed. "Say you rotsome man-hugger?" Suddenly, he saw the soldiers. In a flash, he was sitting up. He looked around him. He saw more soldiers. With a roar, he leaped to his feet. The soldiers, petrified with fear, froze where they were. They had no weapons with them. The head of the army put his jeep into reverse. "Human beings!" the flesh lump eater yelled. "What is all you flush bunk and rotsome half-baked beans doing in our country?" He made a grab at a soldier and swept him up in his hand. "I's having early suppers today," he shouted, holding the poor squirming soldier at arm's length and roaring with laughter. Sophie, standing on the palm of the BFG's hand, was watching horror-struck. "Do something," she cried. "Quick, before he eats him." "Put that human being down," the BFG shouted. The flesh lump eater turned and stared at the BFG. "What is you doing here with all these grotty twiglets, he bellowed. "You is making me very suspicious." The BFG made a rush at the flesh lump eater, but the colossal 54-foot-high giant simply knocked him over with a flick of his free arm. At the same time, Sophie fell off the BFG's palm onto the ground. Her mind was racing. She must do something. She must increase her bust. Shout out to Are You There, Goddess Mute Margaret? Full circle moment just right there. She remembered the sapphire brooch the queen had pinned onto her chest. Quickly, she undid it. "I is guzzling you nice and slow," the flesh lump eater was saying to the soldier in his hand. "Then I is guzzling 10 or 20 more of you midgety little maggots down there. You is not getting away from me, 'cause I is galloping 50 times faster than you." Sophie ran up behind the flesh lump eater. She was holding the brooch between her fingers. When she was right up close to the great naked hairy legs, she rammed the 3-inch long pin of the brooch as hard as she could into the flesh lump eater's right ankle. It went deep into the flesh and stayed there. The giant gave a roar of pain, jumped high in the air. He dropped the soldier and made a grab for his ankle. The BFG, knowing what a coward the flesh lump eater was, saw his chance. "You was bitten by a snake," he shouted. "I seen it biting you. It was a frightsome, poisonous viper. It was a dreadly, dunderous, vinscreen viper." "Save our souls," bellowed the flesh lump eater. "Shout the crumpets! I's bitten by a septus venomsome vinscreen viper." Then he flopped to the ground and sat there howling his head off and clutching his ankle with both his hands. His fingers felt the brooch. "Oh, the teeth of the dreaded viper is still sticking in me," he yelled. "I's feeling the teeth sticking into my anklet." The BFG saw his second chance. "Oh, we must be getting those viper's teeth out at once," he cried. "Otherwise you is deader than ducky soup. I is helping you." The BFG knelt down beside the flesh lump eater. "You must grab your anklet very tight with both hands," he ordered. "That will stop the poisonous juices from the venomsome viper going up your leg and into your heart." The flesh lump eater grabbed his ankle with both hands. "Now close your eyes and grittle your teeth and look up to the heaven and say your prayers while I is taking out the teeth of the venomsome viper," the BFG said. The terrified flesh lump eater did exactly as he was told. The BFG signaled for some rope. The soldier rushed it over to him. With both of the flesh lump eater's hands gripping his ankle, it was a simple matter for the BFG to tie the ankles and hands together with a tight knot. Tricky trickster. I is pulling out the frightsome viper's teeth, the BFG said as he pulled the knot really tight. Do it quickly, shouted the flesh lump eater. Oh, before I is poisoned to death. There he is, said the BFG, standing up. You can look now. When the flesh lump eater saw that he was trussed up like a turkey, he gave a yell so loud that the heavens trembled. He rolled and he wiggled, he fought and he figgled, he squirmed and he swiggled. But there was not a thing that he could do. Well done, you, Sophie cried. Well done, you, said the BFG, smiling down at the little girl. You is saving all our lives. Will you please get that brooch back for me, Sophie said. It belongs to the Queen. The BFG pulled the beautiful brooch out of the flesh lump eater's ankle. The flesh lump eater howled. The BFG wiped the pin and handed it back to Sophie. Curiously, not one of the other 8 snoring giants had woken up during the schmozzle. When you is only sleeping 1 or 2 hours a day, you is sleeping extra doubly deep, the BFG explained. The heads of the Army and the Air Force drove forward once again in a jeep. Her Majesty will be very pleased with me, the head of the Army said. I shall probably get a medal. What's the next move? Now you is all driving over to my cave to load up my bottles of dreams, the BFG said. We can't waste time with that rubbish, the Army General said. It's the Queen's order, Sophie said. She was now back on the BFG's ham, So the 9 jeeps drove across to the BFG's cave, and the great dream loading operation began. There were 50,000 jars in all to be loaded up, more than 5,000 to each jeep. It's a bit of a tall tale. We just gotta roll with it. And it took over an hour to finish the job. Not to mention the giants, of course. Anyway, while the soldiers were loading the dreams, the BFG and Sophie disappeared over the mountains on a mysterious errand. Then they came back. The BFG had a sack the size of a small house slung over his shoulder. What's that you've got there? The head of the army demanded to know. Curiosity is killing the cat. Curiosity is killing the rat, the BFG said. And he turned away from the silly man. When he was sure that all his precious dreams had been safely loaded onto the jeeps, the BFG said, Now we is driving back to the belly poppers and picking up the frightsome giants. Loving the voices you do so well. Thanks, Linda. I try my best. Yeah, I kind of sold myself short on not doing the Scottish. I can do really well, and I freaking robbed myself. It was only in the 1 chapter, for God's sakes. Anyways, the jeep drove back to the helicopters. Of course, I instantly go into the Scottish accent. All I have to do is either talk to someone from Scotland, or talk about Scotland, or talk about talking about Scotland, or talking like Scotland, and suddenly it just comes to me. The jeeps drove back to the helicopters. The 50,000 dreams were carried carefully, jar by jar, onto the helicopters. The soldiers climbed back on board, but the BFG and Sophie stayed on the ground. They all returned to where the 9 giants were lying. It was a fine sight to see them. These great air machines hovering over the trussed-up giants. It was an even finer sight to see the giants being woken up by the terrific thundering of the engines overhead. And the finest sight of all was to observe those 9 hideous brutes squirming and twisting about on the ground like a mass of mighty snakes as they tried to free themselves from their ropes and chains. I is flush bunkled, roared the flesh lump eater. I is spigs whizzled, yelled the child chewer. I is swasquappled, bellowed the bone cruncher. I is goose grouselled, howled the man mugger. I is gunzel swiped, shouted the meat dripper. I is flung gungled, screamed the maid masher. I is slop groggled, squawked the gizzard gulper. I is crod swinkled, yelled the blood bottler. I is mop, Sorry. What voice was... Sorry, I was getting that from another show. Oh, it's Bop Buggard. Bop Muggard, screeched the butcher boy. Jesus. Okay. And here's a picture of all the queens. Above their heads. The 9 giant-carrying helicopters each chose a separate giant and hovered directly over him. Very strong steel hawsers with hooks on the ends of them were lowered from the front and rear of each helicopter. The BFG quickly secured the hooks to the giant's chains, one hook near the legs and the other near the arms. Then, very slowly, the giants were winched up into the air, parallel with the ground. The giants roared and bellowed, but there was nothing they could do. The BFG, with Sophie once more resting comfortably in his ear, set off at a gallop for England. The helicopters all banked around and followed after him. It was an amazing spectacle. Those 9 helicopters winging through the sky, each with a trussed-up 50-foot-long giant slung underneath it. The giants themselves must have found it an interesting experience. They never stopped bellowing, but their howls were drowned by the noise of the engines. When it began to get dark, the helicopters switched on powerful searchlights and trained them onto the galloping giant so as to keep him in sight. They flew right through the night and arrived in England just as dawn was breaking. Okay. Sorry, guys. I really do want to finish this tonight, so I'm just going to keep going. If you have to check out, I don't know, if you got curfews or something, it's 8:20 something, I'm just going to big fat do it. If it takes till 9, it takes till 9. You can just watch the rest of this tomorrow. As long as I didn't violate any copyright infringements at the beginning of the show. It's always a crapshoot, I never know. Feeding time. While the giants were being captured, a tremendous bustle and hustle was going on back home in England. Every earth digger and mechanical contrivance in the country had been mobilized to dig the colossal hole in which the 9 giants were to be permanently imprisoned. You're welcome for those words. Oh yeah, I know. Thanks. You know I'm thanking you, Frobscottle. Frobscottle will haunt me forever. That word in particular. 10,000 men and 10,000 machines worked ceaselessly through the night under powerful arch lights, and the massive task was completed only just in time. The hole itself was about twice the size of a football field and 500 feet deep. The walls were perpendicular, and engineers had calculated that there was no way a giant could escape once he was put in. Even if all 9 giants were to stand on each other's shoulders, the topmost giant would still be some 50 feet from the top of the hole. That's a fucking deep hole. The 9 giant-carrying helicopters hovered over the massive pit. The giants, one by one, were lowered to the floor. But they were still trussed up, and now came the tricky business of releasing them from the bonds. Nobody wanted to go down and do this because the moment a giant was freed, he would be sure to turn on the wretched person who had freed him and gobble him up. As usual, the BFG had the answer. I has told you before, he said. Giants has never eaten giants. So I is going down, and I shall untie them myself before you can say Rack Jobbinson. With thousands of fascinated spectators, including the Queen, peering down into the pit, the BFG was lowered on a rope. One by one, he released the giants. They stood up, stretched their stiffened limbs, and started leaping about in fury. Why is they putting us down here in this glob-sludging hole? They shouted at the BFG. Because you is guzzling human beings, the BFG answered. I was always warning you not to do it, and you has never taken the titchiest bit of notice. In that case, the flesh lump eater bellowed, I think we is guzzling you instead. BFG grabbed the dangling rope and was hoisted out of the pit just in the nick of time. The great bulging sack he had brought back with him from Giant Country lay at the top of the pit. What's in there? The Queen asked him. The BFG put an arm into the sack and pulled out a gigantic black and white striped object the size of a man. Snozcumbers, he cried. This is the repulsant Snozcumber Magister, and that is all we is going to give these disgusted giants from now on. May I taste it? The Queen asked. Don't, Magister, don't, cried the BFG. It is tasting of trog filth and pig squibble. With that, he tossed the snozzcumber down to the giants below. That's your supper, he shouted. Have a munch on that. He fished out more snozzcumbers from the sack and threw them down. The giants below howled and cursed. The BFG laughed. It serves them right, left and center, he said. What will we feed them on? What will we feed them on when the snozzcumbers are all used up? The Queen asked him. Oh, they is never being used up, Magister, the BFG answered, smiling. Oh, he's also bringing in this sack a whole bungle of snozzcumber plants, which I is giving, with your permission, to the royal gardener to put into the soil. Then we is having an everlasting supply of this repulsant food to feed these thirst-bloody giants from now on. What a clever fellow you are. What a clever fellow you are, the Queen said. You're not very well educated, but you are really nobody's fool. I can see that. Jamie, hi, neighbor. How you doing? Oh, that's it. Sorry, guys. I just kind of ended it I didn't mean to be so, I don't know. There's no real sense of arrival there. What a clever fellow you are, the Queen said. You're not very well educated, but you are really nobody's fool. I can see that. The end. Ta-da! There's the big triumphant finish. I thought there was more because there's a whole bit about the author. I thought it was more of the story. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of cool stuff about the author, but that's it. Ta-da! BFG wins. Gets rid of those goddamn giants. And Sophie, well, in the movie, she goes on to live with the Queen at the palace, I think, because I think that's how it went down anyway. So, highly unlikely tale in every respect, but hey, all the best ones are, right? So thank you so much for joining me. Now, we were going to discuss, that's not the end. I didn't think they're about the offers about the BFG. Really? It's a good thing you're here, Emily, for crying out loud. About the authors, about him too. I don't know. You can see how I'd be confused, right? Hang on. I thought it was an awful abrupt end, so I'm really glad that you read on, babe. Okay. This just in. The story's not over. God, never a dull moment in Auntie Andrea's reading corner. Anyway. Okay, here we go. Honestly, just in my defense, it says the author. So, because in one of the other books, there is a whole about the author thing about him and the witches. So, anyway, I'm sure you all believe me. The author. Every country in the world that had in the past been visited by the foul, man-eating giants sent telegrams of congratulations and thanks to the BFG and to Sophie. Kings and presidents and prime ministers and rulers of every kind showered the enormous giant and the little girl with compliments and thank yous, as well as all sorts of medals and presents. The ruler of India sent the BFG a magnificent elephant, the very thing he had been wishing for all his life. Nice. The king of Arabia sent them a camel each. The Lama of Tibet sent them a llama each. Wellington sent them 100 pairs of wellies each. Panama sent them beautiful hats. The king of Sweden sent them a barrel full of sweet and sour pork. Jersey sent them pullovers. There's no end to the gratitude of the world. The Queen herself gave orders that a special house with tremendous high ceilings and enormous doors should immediately be built in Windsor Great Park, next to her own castle, for the BFG to live in. And a pretty little cottage was put up next door for Sophie. The BFG's house was to have a special dream storing room with hundreds of shelves in it, where he could put his beloved bottles. What is more, he was given the titles of the Royal Dream Blower. He was allowed to go galloping off to any place in England on any night of the year to blow his splendid fizz wizards in through the windows to sleeping children. Letters poured into his house by the million from children begging him to pay them a visit. Meanwhile, tourists from all over the globe came flocking to gaze down and wonder at the 9 horrendous, man-eating giants in the great pit. They came especially at feeding time, when the snozzcumbers were being thrown down to them by the keeper, and it was a pleasure to listen to the howls and growls of horror coming up from the pit as the giants began to chew up the filthiest tasting vegetable on the planet. There was only one disaster. 3 silly men who had drunk too much beer for lunch decided to climb over the high fence surrounding the pit, and of course they fell in. There were yells of delight from the giants below, followed by the crunching of bones. The head keeper immediately put up a big notice on the fence saying, "It is forbidden to feed the giants." And after that, there were no more disasters. The BFG expressed a wish to learn how to speak properly, and Sophie herself, who loved him as she would a father, volunteered to give him lessons every day. She even taught him how to spell and to write sentences, and he turned out to be a splendid, intelligent pupil. In his spare time, he read books. He became a tremendous reader. He read all of Charles Dickens, whom he no longer called Doll's Chickens. I kind of like the Doll's Chickens, actually. And all of Shakespeare and literally thousands of other books. He also started to write essays about his own past life. When Sophie read some of them, she said, "These are very good. I think perhaps one day you could become a real writer." "Oh, I would love that," cried the BFG. "Do you think I could?" "I know you could," Sophie said. "Why don't you start by writing a book about you and me?" "Very well," the BFG said. "I'll give it a try." So he did. He worked hard on it, and in the end, he completed it. Rather shyly, he showed it to the Queen. The Queen read it aloud to her grandchildren. Then the Queen said, "I think we ought to get this book printed properly and published so that other children can read it." This was arranged, but because the BFG was a very modest giant, he wouldn't put down his own name. He used someone else's instead. By where, you might ask, is this book that the BFG wrote? It's right here. You've just finished reading it. Aw, tingles! And there's a picture of the BFG. Okay. Thank Christ you were here, Alex. I thought that was kind of like fucking lame, man. It just kind of ends like that because the book was a little bit more exciting than that was. Honestly, I would have put it away and never known. Oh, good Lord Almighty. Anyway, everything happens the way it's supposed to. And that cracked me right up. So, I love you. I always think of this as prayer, but I know it's supposed to be thank you, right? Anyway. Yes, so as far as the next book goes, like I said, I was thinking a couple of options, and I think it's getting kind of late, and I know Mel and Adele and all those people that tend to frequently pop in. I like to get their 2 cents as well. But yeah, I'm thinking basically I can do, like, this is the other, okay, so, quick story. Back when I was in Nova Scotia, actually, well, when I was married, all the 11 years I was married, my ex-husband was a huge CBC fan. That's all he ever listened to. And on the only day I would really listen was Sunday afternoon, because Sunday afternoons were really good. And there was my favorite show was The Vinyl Cafe with Stuart McLean. Love him. He's an incredible storyteller, incredible orator. I actually paid to see him live at Acadia University in Wolfville, Nova Scotia. And it was like I was seeing, Larry and Willie to me, because they were like my stars, my rock stars when I was growing up, right? Because I love radio so much. And so anyway, he wrote a book. Now, one of the things features in his show, The Vinyl Cafe, he always tells a story about Dave Morley. There's a friend of his, Dave, who's a real guy, and his wife. And he just starts it out of nowhere. He just starts the story, and it's always such a freaking great story. I mean, every week I'd be riveted, like, shh, don't talk, because I had to hear the whole thing. It's about 20, 30 minutes. You always laugh, inevitably I'd cry because there's always something super touching about it, but it's always funny and relatable. And it's just life experiences of this couple, Dave and Morley, and the ridiculous shit that he gets up to, usually about Dave doing dumb stuff. But they're ridiculously in love too, and there's always a lesson in there, and it's just fucking great stories. Anyway, he actually published those stories years ago, and I jumped on buying it. I've never actually read it. It's been on my bookshelf for years. And I remember I bought a copy for my Uncle Greg, who's passed away now, and myself. So that's the other thing I can do. What I thought I could do is short stories. So I could do, like I said, Tickle Me Tuesdays, which maybe I'll come up with a different name. Maybe something for Thursday on this one or something, which is just a really beautiful tale that anyone can hear. And it's just, honestly, at the end of it, you're going to fall right to sleep or be forgetting all about your worries from the day, because they're always just so great. And then on the other night, I could do short erotic tales like we discussed the other night, right? And, you know, I know Penthouse Forum is the way to go, because I think that might be a little bit too risque. I'm not wearing pants. Corey, I'm not wearing pants either. True story. I'm not. I'm sitting here in my underwear and this. No bra. Too much information, but you started it. Anyway, so that's what I'm thinking. I can do that. So split it up and have the two different. I met Larry and Willie, not very friendly, but oh well. I like the idea of Vinyl Cafe stories and short stories. Thanks, hon. Gotta run. Peace, love, and thanks. Yeah, love you too. I'll post when I'm going to be starting it. Either, what day is it today? Tuesday. I'd like to think I'll start Thursday. At the very least, I'll do this. I'll do the show on Thursday so we can talk about it. Try and get people in the conversation to figure out what we're going to do. But at the cool. I think it's cool. I mean, that's the nice thing about doing this, is that you can't see anything from the waist down, so it doesn't really matter, does it? I just get too hot sitting here if I'm I don't know, fully clothed. Anyway, enough about that. So I'm kind of digging myself into a hole with every passing comment. So yeah, that's what I thought, is that then, and the nice thing about short tales is that you don't have to clue in every week. It's not like you have to, like my cousin Michelle fell off this segment or this book because she didn't hear the first one, so she kind of felt like, well, I don't want to jump in the middle. I'll catch up. But of course, no one has time to watch hours of videos to catch up. So short stories are kind of nice because you can check in, you know, hear it, off you go, come back next week or the next time, join me every time or no times, whatever you want. And plus, I think that's kind of the direction I want to go in. The other option is like doing something like, for instance, The Artist's Way, which is a really cool book that it's kind of, I don't want to call it self-help, but at this time of challenge where we're all kind of going through a lot of shit and it's not easy, and we're kind of, you know, people are losing jobs and they're losing hours and they're struggling and wondering when things are going to get worse, and it's scary. Like I just did 2 showings today, both of those couples. One of them has lost their work and everything, and it just fucking breaks my heart. I'm very fortunate that I'm in the employment that I'm in, so it's not going to stop anytime soon, if ever. But anyway, so my point was I could do something that would be uplifting, something that could be something like, for instance, The Artist's Way is a 12-week program that I did years ago. I love it. The idea is that it helps uncover things, and it's every week you read, it's set up that you read a chapter, and at the end of the chapter there's questions and things to consider, things to think about until the next week. And it's really good. It's deep stuff. It really gets down into places it's good places. It's about discovering that we're all artists in our own lives. That's why it's called The Artist's Way. It's not about being an artist per se. The theory is that we're all artists. We're all creating our realities. And it's a really fantastic book that I have lent, and Julia Cameron wrote it a long time ago. I've lent it out many times, and every time I've lent somebody, they've said like fucking life changer, because it's just also a lot of it's about, like, if you've got dreams and ambitions that you're not realizing, it's about getting on track with those things and how to do it and still maintain your regular lifestyle. It's not about taking big giant leaps in weird directions and abandoning your life. I would never encourage such a thing, but it's about, I don't know, getting on path, we'll say, in any kind of way, because everybody relates differently to it. So that's an option too. but that might be a bit too, I don't know, maybe boring for people. I kind of like that stuff. I like the being able to talk about it after and share ideas and talk about the last week's stuff. It's probably something I'm going to do anyway at some point in the future because I think it's really good to do. I'm going to charge nothing for it. It'll just be something where a forum where we can all, people who want to participate can jump in and we can discuss and share if they want, or I can just simply read it and give my thoughts. And what it will do is lift people up, because that's what this is all about. Like my podcast is going to be called Lift Living. Life is for the living. Lift living. I'm here to lift you up. I'm here to lift myself up. And it worked today because I feel good. I was feeling really tired, but I actually feel really good now. So thank you, as always, for joining me. Bob, you are my, you stick in there right to the bitter end, and I know you're up early. So thank you for that. I love you. Phil, love you too. Thank you for joining me live. This is such a nice treat. I'm not sure who else. Jamie. Oh, hi, Jamie. Are you still there? Jamie Wallace. Hi, Jamie. If you're still there, good to see you, honey. Corey Edwards. Love you, babe. Emily. I know she's already left, but love you too. My cousins Laura and Caroline from Scotland checked in at 4 a.m. So love you for checking in to say hello. And thank you for joining me for this book. So until next time, I will leave you. I will love you and leave you, as my family would say. Give some thought as to what you would prefer me to do. Feel free to direct message me ideas and thoughts about what kind of book I should do or what format I should use. Could The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe be on the list in future? My kids would love your reading. I think there's a series, had them all at one point as a youngster, had a great night under Seymour. Yes, absolutely, Corey, of course, because the children's tales I like to do because they are lighthearted and easy to hear, comforting. They do allow us to kind of escape reality for a little while. So absolutely, great idea. And that's another series I never read as a child. So if I do, I'll let you know, and we'll definitely take your kids on that journey with us, okay? So, wrapping it up, good night. Like I said, DM me with any private thoughts or ideas you might have about what I'm going to do next. And until then, take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Remember that I love you. And don't worry, everything's going to be just fine. As long as we all stick together and support one another. And I am here to support you guys. And I know you're all there to support me. And I love you.